It's my honor and pleasure for the second time to introduce you to Fred. I met Fred many years ago, working with another training company, and we've been part of different teams to help with different companies' sales training. Fred's had a huge career since then, traveling all over the world, training tens of thousands of salespeople. He's one of the UK's top sales trainer. And his second book, Hybrid Selling, has been a phenomenal success on Amazon. So he's here to help us understand the transition to modern selling techniques and how to make your selling technique really suit you and your style and transcend what are sometimes very clunky models. So it's a very important session because it can make a huge difference to your conversion ratios. So listen up. Fred, over to you.
Brilliant, Bob. Thank you. Oh, lovely introduction. And I'm pleased you didn't put actual numbers on on how long we've known each other. I mean, on the subject of which, just to get everyone going and get some stuff into chat, could I ask people to type in, what is their favorite dinosaur? What is your favorite dinosaur? Now, no, it's a bit of an odd question. It kind of does assume that everyone does have a favorite dinosaur. So I'm just having a look down there at chat, making people think about their favorite dinosaur going on there. Now, Bob's actually done something that I very rarely see. Pretty much everyone, when I ask this question, puts T-Rex. Now, I don't know if that's because it is their favorite dinosaur or it's just easier to type. Nobody has ever put pterodactyl, or however you write that. One that doesn't eat people. People, I love it. Okay, so right, while I'm asking about dinosaurs, it is just to get you having a little bit of a think, get brain going, bring you into the webinar, start to think about what we're going to say. And despite Bob's introduction, it's because I'm not a dinosaur, or certainly I don't think I am. Yeah, as he said, I'm founder of Brindis, which is a sales training consultancy. I've been doing that for 22 years. I've worked out over the last sort of that time, I've been around the world 14 times. So I've worked in 36 different countries, trained over 10,000 salespeople. It's whilst doing that that I kind of spotted the trends and some of the major challenges that salespeople have, which is why I wrote my first book, Selling Through Partnering Skills. So that was the one which I spoke about last time when Bob very kindly invited me on the first webinar. And we sort of looked at the challenges that salespeople have, which for me broadly fall into three main categories: busy, 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 oldie worldy, and muddled mindset. So again, very briefly, because we've got a whole webinar on this. Busy, 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 people running around, doing lots of stuff, loads and loads of activity, stuff that's getting them tired, stressed, because it's not effective. It's not focused enough, it doesn't work. Now, it might not work because it's connected to the second challenge, which is oldie worldy. Now, oldie worldy is about being old-fashioned. It's about talking too much about yourself. It's about your product. It's about talking your own company. It's getting too technical about stuff. Or it's just using techniques that are from a bygone era. This kind of stuff that winds customers up and we need to get rid of. And the muddled mindset thing is where salespeople are kind of caught in this trap between, well, I know I should be like the trust advisor. I should be consultative. I should be doing things to help people. But end of every month, I get pushed to try to sell things and become more transactional. Ways to deal with these, very broadly: be more effective, get up to date, and be more aligned. So by being more effective, it's about planning better, it's preparing better, it's using process, it's really thinking about what it is you're doing and whether it's having an impact. Getting up to date, for me, that's flip, follow, and focus. So it's flip what you're doing. Start talking more about the customer, their challenges, their company, their issues, their concerns, and start using a process, sort of follow a way of working that can focus in on that. And then when we're thinking about being aligned, this is where the organization is going to be dead clear about what they do, so that managers know how to coach that, and salespeople can be very clear on what it is that they are having to do. They can confirm that their decisions are right. All that stuff's covered in the last webinar, the last book, which I wrote in 2020, or came out in 2020, at the same time as COVID. For me, it doesn't make it any less relevant, because this collaborative sales approach is all about how I try to achieve what I want in the sales world, which is good people doing good things in a good way. And so, sales was evolving anyway. stuff's changing at pace. And when I say at pace, what COVID did is it hit the fast forward button. And so sort of thinking about, what we know about evolution and the way that people are going to survive, it's about the ones that can adapt. Okay, not the fittest, not the smartest, but it's about being able to adapt. And so what happened, or what I saw, is that like that layer of challenges that I see, another layer was kind of brought in on top of that. So that's why I wrote the book, because I wanted to give people something to be able to address that, to be able to do something to future-proof themselves, and to kind of deal with this kind of confusing situation that we're in. The challenges that we've now also got to deal with as professional salespeople, or as people who are managing or selling in a professional environment, are challenges all to do with change. And again, there's three kind of main areas. These are changes to do with customers, changes to do with the selling climate, and changes to do with change itself. But again, this is where I want to break this down into a little bit more detail. When we think about customers are far more advanced. There's so much more information out there. They're far further down the buying process. They've got this whole load of things that they can reference and start to solve themselves. We hear that salespeople are really coming in for like 17%, or a very smaller part of the whole buying journey. And customers are more biased. They know what they want. They like what they know. They're leaning towards the things that they're comfortable with. Everything's in their court, really. It's not though. Because I would also say customers are more confused. They're living in the same world as us. The same VUCA environment. I love this model VUCA. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. Same world that we live in as salespeople. So yeah, while it might sound that things are a little trickier, it does open itself to some opportunities. And we'll look at how that starts to pan out. When I think about the climate, for me, I'm talking about the sales climate. And one of the things that I'm seeing more and more now, there's so many different types of sale. It can become incredibly confusing for salespeople. Are they operating a predictable revenue model? Have we got SDRs and AEs? Are they full cycle people? Are we using enterprise sales? Are we using consultative? Are we using value-based? Is it classic? There's so many different terms, there's so many different approaches, methodologies, ways of working, which kind of leads into all the different techniques which are also available. Lots and lots of stuff is thrown at salespeople, like, this is the best way to work, here's a way to work, do this, do that, do the other. Again, that climate can become incredibly frustrating, I guess, as much as confusing. And then we look at the tech involved in sales. We look at the amount of marketing and sales technology. I think at last count, there was over 9,500 different apps, platforms, pieces of tech that people can use. Whether we're talking some video type technology, whether we're using AI to do some heavy lifting for us, there's lots of stuff out there, which again can become a bit confusing, a bit overwhelming. We need to be dealing with this stuff. When I think about change and then kind of how change is changing, for me, one of the big things is about the sense of change. And by that, what I mean is that I believe that some salespeople are like that metaphorical frog in the water that's heating up. And we know if we chuck a frog in boiling water, it's going to jump out, it doesn't like it. But if we put in the heat underneath the water, it gently starts to get hotter and hotter. Frog doesn't realize, frog doesn't move, frog boils. I really think some salespeople aren't sensing the changes that are happening and could potentially get caught out with this. Now, even when people do understand change, we all have different stances to it. And by that, I mean that some people love change. They're change initiators. They think this is exciting, it's new stuff, it's opportunity, let's go for it, new, great. Others are the other end of the spectrum of resistors. They'll push back, they don't like it, they're going to stay what they're doing all the time and not want to make any adaptations. Majority in the middle will eventually adapt. And this kind of leads into the next thing, which is about the speed of change, that because the speed of change is picking up, it's getting faster and faster. That's something that, again, we want to be able to equip salespeople to deal with. So let me ask a question, because I've been talking a little bit, want something in chat. Just a yes or no, that'll do. Does everybody know Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the film. Of course we do. New or old? What's your preference? New one or old one? New or old? New or old? New, old, 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 old. I think I'm with you on the old one. There is a new one. Go on, Bob. Johnny Depp is dodgy. Oh, I love it. I like the old one. Yeah, we know this picture, G. Wilder. It's been on 1,000 memes. But for me, if you can remember the scene in the film, or the part of the film where they go and they get into the boat, and this boat's going down this tunnel, and what happens is they're going down the tunnel, they're getting faster and faster and faster. And what Willy Wonka is talking about is this poem which is saying that, like, there's no earthly way of knowing whether it's raining, is it flowing, is it pouring, is it blowing, or the winds are they are doing. It speeds up and up and up and up. And I just think that's a brilliant kind of metaphor for the kind of world, the sales world we're in at the moment. And if we're not careful, I think there is the opportunity that some salespeople are going to miss the bus. I think it's that serious, that if we're not making the right adaptations, if we're not getting up to date, if we're not using some of those new ways of working, we are going to get left behind. That's something I don't want salespeople to do. That's why I started putting my thoughts into words and read that book. The adaptations we're going to make to change. Okay, so what do they look like? Again, for each of those challenges, there's things which we can do. When we think about the customers, what we as sales professionals need to do is become more buyer-centric. We want to align to the way that customers are operating. Now, this can be that they're very expert in what they buy. They understand their buying process. They're going through the stages. They're comfortable with this. If we try to change them, they'll get annoyed. However, there could also be customers who don't really know how to buy the stuff they're buying. It could be something that they're not used to. They'll only ever buy once. They're confused. And so as a salesperson, we can then take the role as a guide. So it's being really aware as to how do I have to adapt my approach to work right with this type of customer. When we think about these customer bias, what we need to do is to balance our approaches. We need to do the things that we know are going to be effective in a way that's going to help them in what they're trying to achieve. It's picking the right kind of way to work. And there is huge opportunity for customers that are confused to clarify the situation for them. Now, I mentioned VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. There's a wonderful model, I love it, called VUCA Prime, which is how to combat each of those elements. So if people are feeling volatility, what we can do as a salesperson is help them with vision, help them understand what it is that they're trying to do, where they're trying to go, what they're trying to achieve. With uncertainty, we match this up with understanding. We give them information, we teach them, we help them understand things, we give perspectives, we give insights. If people are feeling complexity, again, we can give them clarity, we can give them ways to operate. We might produce a mutual action plan. We can start to give them steps, we can give them a way forward to get out of this situation that they're in. If people are feeling ambiguity, if they're not really sure about what's going on, again, what we can do is we can help them be more agile, we can help them more responsive, we can give them options and ways to operate. I love it as a model. It's a whole kind of thing that salespeople could really dine out on with customers. VUCA and VUCA Prime, love it. When we think about the climate, when we think about the way in which we're needing to operate, this is where we use a thing called contextual judgment. So it's working out the thing that's the right way to operate at a time. It's actually a phrase that I first learned way back in the day when I was a rugby referee. It's about which stuff you penalise, which stuff you don't. Is it making a difference? Do you let it go? And so, yeah, it's about the things which are going to make a difference. So when we think about the type of sale, what we do is we look at all these options available and we transform our approach into one that's appropriate for the way that we need to work with our customers. We then think about all these techniques, all these ideas, all these things which are available out there, and we take the ones and we tailor them into a way which works for us. And with technology, we take control of it. We don't let technology drive us. We don't let it take control. We take control of it. We use it to help us. Video meetings to save us time. Sending video to get more diffusion. AI to do some of the heavy lifting, to transcribe things for us, to help us edit stuff. There's lots of stuff there which are going to help us to do things. when we think about changing change, so this is all about taking our own insight and thinking about, okay, what do we understand about change and what can we do? So the savviness is about just understanding, where are we? What's going on around us? Should we be sensing that the change that we're experiencing is something that we can do something about? So what can we do? How can we change our stance to make sure that we're doing something that's smooth? And we want to be slick. Slick is an interesting word when it comes to selling. I looked it up. I'm just going to consult my notes here. Slickness, when you look it up, can mean hanky-panky, hocus-pocus, jiggery-pokery, skullduggery, and trickery. Okay, so I'm not going to propose any of those as a clever way of working. Slick also means smart. Also means smart. So smart and smooth. Again, the analogy that I like with this, it's like sitting in the back of a Maybach limousine. That's what our customer experience has got to be. There we are, sat. Other limousines are available. I just think Maybachs are pretty cool. And they're there, they're beside us. And that journey, we can be going at quite a speed, but when this thing takes off, you hardly feel it and you're coasting along and the whole thing is just going really, really well. That's what we're aspiring to do with our salespeople. Why do I do this stuff? Okay, so yeah, a little bit of backstory. Some of you might have heard it before, but my first job was in sales. We had a family business back when I was a kid. It was a builder's merchants, also sold kitchens and bathrooms. And at Christmas, or on the Boxing Day, was when we had the big sale. Now, at 8 years old, I was allowed to go and help. I suspect help should be in inverted commas, but yeah, I was allowed to go along. And it was really cool. They kitted me out in this massive orange polo shirt. So we've got these company colours and everyone wore this uniform, but it was big because I was only 8. And remember those old fashioned brown warehouse coats? Yeah, I got one of those as well. So I was all dressed up, ready to do the job, dwarfed by all this stuff, or swamped in it. And you need to say the premises was an old Victorian mill, big old water mill. It's December. Mills are made of stone. I was stone cold, but I was having a great laugh because I was in this part of the mill, which was next to the wheelhouse, which was our tile store. And I was helping customers to pick these tile remnants, stuff they wanted for projects and do whatever. Basically, I was chatting to them, helping them and having a good time. And I didn't really know that was sales. But it is, if we think about it, it's helping our customers, it's doing something, it's bringing a little bit of value. But I loved it. I really did love that. And it's something that I've loved ever since. All my stuff I've done ever since then has had some kind of commercial background, whether it's going to university for commerce, all kind of commercial roles I've had, 23 years now as a sales trainer. I have a growth mindset and I love working with people with growth mindset. People with a fixed mindset, I struggle with. And I don't know if we talk about this age, I know it's been a bit of a thing here, but I don't know if it's an old age thing, but people who haven't got a growth mindset, who are fixed, I struggle with, and I have less and less time for them. I think I've spent too long in my career trying to save too many people rather than really putting the time and focus into people who want to fly, who want to excel. And that's something I'm starting to change now. I'm very conscious about that. I want to work with people who want to make a difference. Who are they? Well, pretty much everyone, potentially. Everybody works in sales. That's an opinion I have. And if they want to grow, if they want to get better at doing sales, then absolutely that's something I'll put my time and effort into. I actually believe sales skills are life skills. I do stuff with a local university, building a student sales academy, and something that I'm starting to roll out now. So yeah, keep an eye on that sort of stuff. Anyway, that's too much about me. Let me ask another question. So, do you like crisps? Yes or no? Actually, yes or no, that's too easy. Yes. Yes, Fred, stop asking these questions before lunch. I've pretty much lost my audience now, I realise that. Not clever. All right then, pretty much yeses. Favourite flavour? Favourite flavour? Oh, mini cheddars. Controversial, it's not crisp. But also they're very nice. Cheese and onion. Cheese and onion. What else? Cheese and onion club. Yes. So many again here, okay. Any others? Reason I asked this question is just a little bit of a tester. If anybody, oh, someone's done it. I was going to say, if anyone puts prawn cocktail, you can leave now. I can't talk to you anymore. You're weird. I say that to my wife regularly because that's her favorite flavor. But one more question then. So what color is the bag for cheese and onion? What color is the bag for cheese and onion? Blue, blue, blue. Good. Oh, what? Green? Again, it's another qualification question. If you put anything but blue, I'm not sure we can be friends. Of course, it depends which part of the world you're in. So okay. Now, right, why am I asking this stuff? Why am I on about crisps? Right, let's just think about crisps and the manufacture of crisps. Okay, so cheese onion crisps. Somebody's growing onions, somebody's making cheese, and somebody is selling that. Probably sell it to a flavor house where, certainly if we're talking crisps, the flavor house will be using their expertise to create the cheese and onion flavor. It's quite a complex process. And the sale to the manufacturer is also complex. And somebody's leading that, someone's doing that. In the manufacturer, there will be a whole load of machines that somebody sold. There'll be logistics, moving all this stuff around that somebody sold. There'll be all the IT, all the stuff that, managing the operation that somebody sold. There's lots of sales going on. And then someone's going to take these crisps, they're going to sell it to the supermarket, say, somebody's leading that sale. In the supermarket, we've got the shelves, we've got the checkouts, we've got all the stuff that somebody sold. Lots and lots of different sales going on here. And what I do get worried about, I get really concerned about this, is that people involved in this type of selling are getting left behind. To me, there's so much focus on SaaS, software as a service, and all that kind of sexy way of operating, that good traditional, if that's the right word, I don't even know if it's the right word, but people who are doing this kind of selling are potentially getting left behind. Again, that was a big motivator for me behind why I wrote the book. Because these evolutions, I was worried already that a lot of people in this form of selling aren't keeping up with it. But certainly, some of the changes that we're seeing, I've already explained, are just making that faster. What I've seen is that many people kind of have been selling or surviving on a sale that, if we use playing a drum analogy, it's a little bit like hitting a single drum with a single stick. It's probably been okay, but as we start to progress, it's not going to be good enough. Modern sales professional needs to have the full drum kit with all the different pieces that they can play at different times to make sure their performance is right. It always reminds me of when I saw Motley Crue in concert. So a little quiz question. Who's the drummer for Motley Crue? Pop that in chat. Bonus points if anybody knows that. I'm really impressed. Who's Motley Crue? I'm saying, what? No clue, no idea. Who? Motley Crue. Motley Crue, it's a rock band. They were supporting Guns N' Roses. Okay, if I said Tommy Lee, maybe you know him. Tommy Lee. So anyway, if you don't, let me just draw the picture for you. So Tommy Lee, he's quite a big character. Likes the attention. It's all about him. Now, usually a drummer sits at the back of the stage. The lead singer takes on all this sort of high profile stuff. Not in that band. The drums are right in the middle. Tommy Lee is the star. He had this big circle of light around his drums. All of the songs seem to have a longer drum solo than normal. And there's one particular one where he's in this big circle of light, but what happened is the drums start to go sideways. They start to go up and sort of the sides of this circle. We're going, what's going on? Is he? And yeah, he did. He went up and around, and at the top, upside down, was playing this massive drum kit, and what performance. The lights are going, and it was great. What makes that even more relevant for me when I think about this as the sales analogy is when he came back down, he then went to the audience, he took somebody out, strapped them in next to him, and did the same thing again. I just love this as a way of thinking, this is what we need to do with sales. We need to have all the kit there to do a really good performance, and we strap our customers in beside us to do a really, really good job. So that broadly is what's gone into the book selling, hybrid selling. So first part of the book, we get introduced to a couple of characters, Harry and Larry. Storytelling is big in sales, so I wanted to practice what I preach and make sure I was telling a story to help people start to get their head around what are the challenges and how would they start to deal with these. So yeah, there's a bit of a story going on in it. And what they do basically, I don't want to spoil it too much, but they uncover a model for hybrid selling, the Evolve framework. The Evolve framework gives us these different ways or different things we need to think about to make sure we are bang up to date. David Brock, sales legend for me, he was very kind to write the foreword, and he says, Fred, this is pretty overwhelming. That's the point, isn't it? There is a lot of stuff that we have to do as salespeople. Yes, that is the whole point. Yeah, I get it. So it can feel a lot, but how do we make that full drum kit to be able to make that brilliant performance? So let me go very quickly through the kind of things we need to be thinking about to make sure we are able to perform properly with our customers. So the first E, it's about essentials. So this is all about understanding the evolution of sales. It's thinking about all the things that have gone before, the stuff that still works, and making sure that we take those and we use those, but also that we bin the stuff that isn't useful for us anymore, that's holding us back, that's annoying customers. That's the value framework. So that's basically, fully enough, it's in the first book, Selling Through Partner Skills, because that's what I believe is the best way to be operating now. It's all about using partnering skills to give this collaborative mindset. Collaborative selling for me is the way forward that sales professionals need to be thinking about. That's the essentials. It's a foundation. Without that, it's like building a house on sand. We have to embrace virtual selling. Many people are doing it pretty well. I'm still finding people that don't want to do it, which surprises me, it shocks me. So yeah, we need to be doing stuff on video, and there are ways to up the video game to get better and better and better. I came across a really cool piece of stuff called Prezi Video, which can make online presentations far sexier than just sharing slides. We need to understand social selling. Social selling is a thing. It's an important thing. I've put it in under virtual because it just fits better in there, because certainly sending video is another big thing that a lot of people are missing out on the trick to do this. So sending video via email, sending it within LinkedIn, it is a brilliant way to communicate with people so they can see you, hear you, and get more of that human interaction. Lots of the tools I've mentioned, so all these sales tools, AI, and all this stuff that we can use to bring it into the way we operate, make our life easier. You've got to get heads around that stuff. And then we've got to think about, how do we manage deals? How do we manage opportunities? This is all about information. And it's about knowing what we know and knowing what we don't know. The old famous known knowns and known unknowns. A lot of this will be around decision-making units. So these are the people that are involved in getting a deal over the line. They're the people who are involved, the influencers and the various different users that we have to make sure we talk to and are happy with the stuff that we're promoting. The decision-making units getting bigger and bigger. So again, if we're not doing something to map this and understand it, we're missing a trick. I think I mentioned mutual action plans already. So really laying out what we need to do together with a customer to get them to the outcomes, to get them to the point that they want to do, the results that we're promising. Again, it's a big trick we're missing. Again, some good tools which again we can employ to share this stuff. Leading. Now, I believe salespeople have to lead customers, which for somebody who doesn't understand sales can sound a little bit old-fashioned, a bit manipulative. It's a leading up the garden path type thing, but it's not. For me, it's about leading them as a servant leader. So it's helping them do the things that they are trying to achieve. Talked about alignment. So is that actually telling them what they need to do because they don't know? Is it supporting them in what they need to do to get them where they want to be? It's adapting that approach. So it's all about understanding buying process, where people are, how they're going about it. We can help them with VUCA. That's a massive area in which we can lead them. That's what I spoke about a little bit earlier. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Help people get their head around that, and you are already adding value. Forget what it is that you're selling. Forget your product, forget your service, forget your company. Help them think. Salesperson and sense maker, big area. Then that will already start to differentiate, particularly if products and things that you're selling are pretty similar to other companies. Everyone hates hearing that, but to be fair, they probably are. So value selling. Value selling's been around for a little bit. A lot of this stuff that I've kind of pulled together, it's not necessarily new. I've just kind of put it into a way of saying, hey, we have to get our heads around this stuff. Now, value selling, yeah, people have talked about it a long time, but I think people get it so wrong. People turn up and they say, right, this is the value you're going to have, Mr. Customer. This is how you're going to have to do stuff. And that, for me, it doesn't work like that. I love the expression that I took from a colleague of mine, Mike Wilkinson, which is that value is a mystery. We have to help people uncover what value is to them. That's the mystery. When we do that, we can start to then help them work towards achieving that value. Good salespeople will generate insight, they'll share perspectives, they'll bring opinions, they'll teach when it's needed to. Okay, help people think. Help people think is another drum. I'm always banging drums, but another drum that I'm banging, that is a modern approach to selling. And then we need to really expand what we're doing. We can get in with customers, we can start to work with them. So account management skills come to the fore, as do customer success management skills. I'm a big fan of customer success management because it's all about outcomes. It's about making sure we deliver what it is we said we're going to do. So I think that's a really important area. And in the book, I also included a piece about self-management. Sales isn't getting any less stressful. It's not getting any easier. And we can put ourselves under enormous amounts of pressure. So we've got to look after ourselves. In the old expression, or the expression about putting your oxygen mask on yourself first, for me, it makes a lot of sense. If we're not in a fit state, if we're not good for being able to go to serve people, then, you know, there's something wrong there. So I think that's an area that we need to focus on a bit more. And there's some excellent people out there who are doing some really good work around this, which I'm very pleased about. So yeah, that for me is that's the Evolve framework. That very briefly is the sort of stuff we need to do. So yeah, the question I ask at this stage is that for you? Is this for you? You know, are you all about moving yourself forward, getting up to speed, making sure you're future-proof or not? I see it a little bit like this, in that, you know, we've got these two lines. I know there's 3 lines on screen, but I don't think there's a middle one. I don't think we can bimble around in the middle. We're either going up or down. If we don't do stuff like this, it is only going to get worse. It's just going to get harder for us. If we can embrace this, if we can look towards building ourselves a better future, things can only get better. So yeah, I mean, that's what I would encourage people to think about. You know, what path are you going to take on that? What can I do to help with this? Okay, so what we'll do is I do have a scorecard around this just to start stimulating some more thinking, to sort of get you to focus in on, you know, how are you doing stuff now, and then provide some dynamic content off the back of your answers to give sort of some ideas of how you can work. Bob's just dropped that into chat, which is cool. But again, what advice would I give? I mean, it's the British mantra: think, learn, do. Well, I can do the thinking. You know, there's the thinking. I'll give you a short version of it, longer versions in the book. But whatever you learn, it's all about doing. We know this. I'm all about steep learning curves. I think I probably said this before on the last session. And I know this is what Bob and I have talked about. In that, if people say steep learning curve is like a bad thing, oh, it's a bit of a steep learning curve. Well, it's great though, isn't it? It means that you get performance faster and smoother. Well, don't you want that? You know, I believe that there's mixing loads of analogies, but there's a race to be run. We're at a start line for this. And if we get off and running, we really can start to make a difference. We can start to future-proof ourselves. You know, we can get, that's putting the story completely to where Harry and Larry did. What's the alternative? Well, the alternative is back to what we were saying about the dinosaurs. That's why I asked early doors on that. Are we going to be a sad dinosaur that's stuck in our ways, but eventually we'll die out? Maybe that's dramatic, but look at all the things we've talked about with change. You know, I think it's a big decision we have to make for ourselves. And if we're in that very, what's the right word? Important position of having salespeople working for us or with us, getting them into a position where, you know, they can make sure that, you know, they're future-proofed. So again, I'm all over this stuff, as you can tell. That's why I'll jump on webinars like this, and when Bob invites me to do stuff like this, it's really kind. I'm all up for sharing this stuff with my name. I've got all the platforms that I want under that name. So YouTube, Twitter, Insta, LinkedIn. There's one TikTok video up. I don't know where to make the leap into there. We'll see. Facebook as well. LinkedIn is the biggie. I think Bob already put my profile in. If you want to connect on that, mention this webinar. I will try, or I will aspire to be sharing valuable stuff. Podcast. Now I do host a weekly podcast, Sales Today, where I get some really cool guests on that, sharing their up-to-date thinking about what can we do to make sure we're relevant? Relevant for me is an important word when it comes to selling. End of the day, I want to be known as the person that did everything I could to get salespeople up to date. Now, whether that's with collaborative selling, whether it's hybrid selling, that's the sort of the legacy I want to leave. I'm not shy about saying that. I'll share it. I want salespeople to be proud about what they do. I mean, it is a bit of a maligned area. It takes a lot of stick. However, I think it is a noble profession, and we should be proud of the stuff that we're doing. I'll go back to what I said earlier. For me, it's all about having good salespeople doing good things in a good way. And if my contribution by putting the hybrid selling thinking out there, and third part of the book is all about how you apply this stuff, then I'm some way on my mission, on my quest to achieving that good people doing good things in a good way. So I know I've talked quite a lot there, probably thrown quite a lot of information at people at once. Hopefully some good food for thought, and I am ready for questions.
Hey, thanks, Fred. Very stimulating. You got the juices flowing in my head, at least, hopefully in the rest of the audience as well. Now, people, please put your questions either in the Q&A or in the chat, and I will field them to Fred. We have a few questions in already, Fred.
Okay, I'm ready.
What do you feel is the most important element of the model Evolve that you've talked us through?
Oh, I mean, it doesn't really work if you take them apart. I mean, with these models, they all interact. I would probably say essentials, because of what I said at the time, which is that's your foundation. If you get excited about all the shiny new stuff, and hands up, who does that? Yeah. He says, raising his hand. But you're not building it on anything solid, then again, it's potentially going to collapse. So it's make sure that your sales essentials, the process you're using, the basics, just the ways in which you ask questions, run meetings, all that good stuff is solid, it's up to date, and then we can start to do a lot of the other things that I spoke about.
Very good, thank you.
Buy book one, Bob, buy book one as well.
Okay.
Is that a bit too pushy?
No, that's all. We have another question in. Earlier on, Fred, you mentioned flip the sales process. Can you tell me more about what you mean?
Yeah, so rather than flip the sales process, it was flip the focus. It's flip what you're doing. Because what will happen when we see people who are working a sort of a little bit old-fashioned is that they will talk all about themselves. And imagine a presentation. We've all sat through these, yeah? Where you go into the presentation and they'll fire up the title slide, and that's all nice. And then comes a map of the world with little dots all over it. A bit like I used early on, but that was being ironic. Because what then happens is we talk all about our offices all around the country, around the world, the factories we've got, all of our resources, how wonderful we are. Up comes the logo slide. Here are all the people that I've worked with, and Here are our 17 product lines. Here's us, we. The customers just don't care. So by flipping it, what we're doing is saying, actually, my job is to talk about them. What challenges have they got? What things are affecting their business? How can they do stuff better? So that's what I mean by the flip. It's like take away the self-focus and make it customer focused.
Okay, good distinction. Yeah, there is too much weeing going on.
Lots of weeing on presentations, Bob, too much.
Okay, another question in from the audience. VUCA. I've never heard of this. How would I implement this in my role? I work in recruitment. Okay.
So VUCA, so again, the story behind VUCA, so I was kind of doing the stuff at pace, but the story behind VUCA is actually really interesting. Well, I think. It's actually a military term, and it came about in the sort of the 50s, or the 50s, 60s, when the Cold War finished. Because at the time, it was clear who the enemy were. We knew who they were, where they were, what they were going to do. Dead obvious, yeah? But of course, that all came down, and then it's like, well, we still have enemies, but we don't know who they are, what they do, how they do it, all this, and it created that VUCA circumstances. So, military started to use this as a way to try and align themselves and get their own thinking right. Hence where that was born. guy called Bob Johansson realized actually business was starting to take a hold of this, because they're saying, oh, we have the same sort of stuff. You know, and that's where VUCA Prime came. So thinking about from a recruitment point of view, again, let's go back to the previous answer, which is a flip and think about, okay, so the people that you're recruiting for, they are in a VUCA world. That's what they are going through. There will be volatility in their market. Now, whatever it is they're selling, whatever it is they're doing, again, if you can spot that, if you can understand that, if you can talk to them about that and you can help them with that and give them a bit of light at the end of the tunnel, a bit of clarity towards that, they'll like you. Then they'll start talking about your recruitment services. If they're a bit uncertain about stuff that's going on, because again, it's hard to really predict, if you can give them information, if you can help them with their understanding, again, it could be providing teaching, literally tell them stuff, or you can facilitate that out by asking them great questions so they start to think through stuff themselves. Again, oh, love talking to you. You're really helpful. Oh yeah, I do recruitment. Yeah, you can be my recruitment guide. Yeah, same with the clarity. Again, giving them steps, giving them process, giving procedures, giving them stuff that they can sort of hang on to just to make a bit of sense of what's going on. Help them do their job, help them make sense of stuff. That's the first port of call. Forget talking about your things. That positions you as a useful person, someone they like, and that they will then want to deal with for whatever it is that you're selling. Recruitment, sales training, medical equipment, whatever it be. So it's the same kind of thing works.
Thank you, Fred. Really very good insight. Thank you for expanding on VUCA.
It sounds sinister, doesn't it? Oh, I don't want VUCA. Let's get rid of VUCA. I'm going to help you get rid of VUCA. Well, yeah, please. Did not have it, but anyway.
Okay. We have another question in, which is kind of a cheeky one. Apart from giving my sales team your book, how can I start persuading them to change?
Give them the scorecard as well. No, right, okay, that isn't the completely flippant answer that it sounds, and I made it sound even more flippant. Because the scorecard is to help them reflect. Give them it and say, look, if you don't want to share the results with me, don't, but take it seriously. Be honest. I mean, if you can't be honest with yourself, what's the point? Use it to just consider, where are you now and what can you do to get better? Again, if we're back to that fixed and growth mindset stuff, it's like, no, I'm great at what I do. I can't get any better. I'm untouchable. The scorecard is designed to stimulate that and then to frighten a little bit. So it's just get them to self-reflect, think about what can they do to be doing better. How can they keep moving, moving the dial, getting better and better? Because if you don't, I mean, the speed of change means you're actually going to fall behind. We've got to keep advancing just to stay still, don't we? So yeah, it's to kind of stimulate the thought around that and get them to self-reflect. And if they really are kind of that arrogant and like, no, brilliant at all this sort of stuff, well, yeah, rude awakening. It's a big sales team. I'll come in and deliver this again, but I can turn the volume up on the scary bit, I promise.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you.
You know that, don't you, Bob? The scary one could go, can you dial up?
Yeah. Yeah, I know how to, yep, I know you know how to turn the volume up. We've got another question in. What are the common mistakes a salesperson makes that takes him or her off focus?
So again, I've started to answer that a little bit with the focus should be on the customer. And what we do is we focus on ourselves. So let's just go into that a little bit more detail. This can be something to do with a comfort zone, because it's actually quite frightening on talking to somebody about them and their world and kind of what's they're all about, when we're actually already trained up and we know all the stuff that we can do, back to front. So the mistake would be to not put the prep in, to not do the research, to not understand the customer's world enough to be confident enough to go in and have a talk about it. At the end of the day, remember, you don't need to know masses, because the idea is to be asking questions to get them to think. So that would be the mistake. It's not prepping enough and knowing enough about it. So you retreat back into your comfort zone. I'll talk about myself.
Interesting, you put it down to prep. It is one of the most challenging aspects, I think, of when you're inducting new salespeople, and sometimes old salespeople, to actually get them to really prepare thoroughly. So many of us wing it, whether you're new or experienced. So it's a great insight. Thank you, Fred.
Yeah, it is. And look, of course, you and I are going to say this, but if you look at often the balance of training, what the people will do is they'll do a hell of a lot of product training and talk about the company themselves and less of the sales training piece. So of course, well, I'm going to go to the stuff that you've told me that's really important. What I'm going to do, I'm going to back myself talking about all that rather than, well, hey, your job is to be talking about the customer, them, their world, and we should be encouraging people to get better and better at that.
Sure. Okay.
There's been a big discussion about discovery on LinkedIn recently, and discovery. Are you just asking questions to check if they're okay for you, and then you're going to dive into your demo and talk about yourself, or are you genuinely helping somebody discover something about themselves, which could mean that what you can do is interesting for them?
Now that's interesting, because the next question now I was going to ask you from our audience was, is our role more to help them buy or more to challenge their thinking and decision making?
If you can install your ESP sense, then you're well good as that. I think so. Salesperson, I've probably said it almost like a bit flippantly and a bit throwaway. So let's underline it. The salesperson as sense maker. Your job is to help them to make sense of the situation they're in. It's to help them think. Best way to help somebody think is to ask them questions, not to tell them stuff. So preparing good questions, get the conversation going, but be brave enough, bold enough that if people are saying things that you think might not be correct, or that they might be missing a bit of a trick, not telling them they're wrong. Some people think challenging sales is like that, but saying, let's just add another element to this. Let me put another filter on it. Let's look at this from a different angle and just help people with that thinking. They will thank you for that in the end. So I think that is a really, really important part. I mean, I bang on that collaborative selling, don't I? That for me is good collaboration. Looking at stuff together from different angles and thinking how to co-create and move things forward better.
Well, co-creates, that leads into another question that's been sent in. You mentioned mutual action plans.
Yes.
What more can you tell us? Can you give us an example?
So these things used to be called mutual close plans, or just close plans, actually, which again, who's that centered on? Bit selfish, isn't it? Yeah. So mutual action plans, or, I mean, the go-to guy for me on this is a guy called Tom Williams. And he says, him and Kevin Dixon actually both use the same word. They call them outcome enablement plans. So we talk to customers, we do all this conversation to understand where they want to be. What are the outcomes they're looking for? Okay. So then what we're doing is we're mapping out for them, what do they have to do to achieve that? Who is going to do what from both parties? Because you're not going to do it all as a salesperson, or you're not all going to do it all as a sales organization. You'll have different people doing stuff. Okay, let's put names against tasks, dates, and let's have what the other party, the customer, is also going to be doing. When that's clear, we can then start to work towards that thing that we want to achieve. So different ways we can do this. You can just have a document which you bounce around between people. Better if you've got something which can be live, so sort of held in the cloud somewhere, Google Doc or something like that. Or there's some really cool software, so again, I talk about these sales tech available. There's things which again can hold this stuff. So it's always live. People are always seeing the most up-to-date version, and everyone who's involved in that plan has got access to it. The one I personally like is BoxStep, BoxXSTEP. I like this because it's got that built in, but it's also got the whole piece about mapping up the decision-making unit. That's the bit which the sales organization keeps. The mutual action plan bit, you share it into the customer. But what's the genius piece of design with this is that when you put somebody's name against it, it also puts a little photograph of them because you link it into LinkedIn. Yeah. And it's got a little green sort of circle around it while the task is live. As soon as they go over the date, when they should have delivered it, if they've not done it, it goes red. Who wants to be sat in a red circle showing you haven't done your stuff? So yeah, that's what mutual action plan is. It's just laying out the implementation, the ways in which we're going to get to that point that you said you wanted to achieve the stuff you wanted to achieve.
Very useful insight. I would totally agree, unless the other party, the prospect, has actually agreed to do something. You haven't sold diddly squat. So mutual action plans are a phenomenal tool to help us focus in on that. We have another question in. You mentioned decision-making unit. What are the different roles or types I should expect to find in a decision-making unit?
Okay, so depending, the people have different labels for these, depending who you're looking at. The ones I default to, and they're broadly similar, but the ones I default to are, first up, in no particular order, but just the way I think about it, the users. So people are going to have the hands-on, the product, the service, the thing that you're selling. That's the user. Now, some people just discount them. They're important. They don't say, they don't sign the check. Yeah, but they have an influence. If you're trying to sell something that people aren't going to adopt, aren't going to use, and aren't taking into consideration what they're trying to achieve, you're missing a point. So we need to understand the users. I then like to talk about criteria buyers. So there's people who've got certain criteria that they're trying to fulfill. And I'll tend to split those into two: technical criteria and commercial criteria. Technical criteria, I mean, if you're selling IT, it could be speeds and feeds and all these kind of things, certain stuff that it's got to do to achieve the job. Commercial criteria, that'll be more to do with budgets, more payment terms, these kind of things. So again, if you're not ticking that box for them, then why are they going to support and why are they going to want to do that? We then start to think about the economic buyer, and it's kind of very deliberate language on this. The economic buyer is the person that ultimately signs the check. It's the yes or no. Now, people often focus in on them thinking, well, they're the one who says yes or no. They're the one that's really bothered about it. They might not be. They literally just say yes or no. And it's basically, are all the rest of the people on my team satisfied with the stuff that you're saying? If they are, I'm good. If they're not, well, I can't do it because I don't want the hassle. Yeah, so people can get that balance wrong. But we do need to understand who that is. The fourth element I would always try and get people to think about is a coach or sponsor, sometimes people call it. So this is somebody who kind of goes above and beyond the call of duty, if you like. So they give you extra information. They're helping you start to achieve this sort of stuff. They'll give you information, they'll give you a little insight. Don't speak to that guy on a Friday, or oh, that person can be a bit of a nightmare. They say they're with it, but they're not. We want that person who's kind of guiding us through. Yeah. There are other ways in which people label this. People talk about champions, so a senior person who is on side and is going to try to push this deal forwards. Again, slightly different term. But if you work with users, criteria buyers, the economic buyer, by the way, the reason I don't call that a decision maker is because it then takes away the whole concept of the decision-making unit. Yeah. And then your coach, if you've got that in there. Bit of paper, draw an organization chart, map who's who, bits of information about all of them. Realize the stuff that you don't know about them. It's frightening when you start to put this down. Then you say, oh, I actually don't know anything about these people. I've done it. You've done this on training course, haven't you? It's like, cool. It's supposed to be my biggest account. I don't know anything. But you then know what you're going to do next. So yeah.
Very good, Fred. Very comprehensive. Thank you. Another question's in. How do I fit your ideas alongside a kind of typical activity KPIs I'm asked to fill in?
How do I fit the stuff and say along the activity block? Okay. So by activity KPIs, are we talking, it depends on the role a little bit. So I'm flying tad blind. The activity KPI should be designed to contribute to all this sort of stuff. Yes, if it's about, if it's on dials, if it's on conversations, it's okay, you're doing those, but are the conversations valuable conversations that are helping people to think? Or are you just ticking off BANT? Yeah. Budget, authority, need, timescale. Yeah, my job done. Like, that doesn't help anybody think about anything, you know? So again, it's what are you doing in that conversation? If it's, again, I'm guessing at job roles here, if it's more of an account management job role, connectivity. So how many people do I know in decision-making units? If you're thinking about, again, outreach and then communicating with people, how many videos am I sending? So that for me counts as a contact, probably better than a call in some ways. So again, it's look at what it is you're doing, and there should be some kind of link across. If there's not, then it's, well, why are we being tasked on this? It's old-fashioned. We're driving behavior which isn't actually doing anything in the modern way of selling, and I would challenge that. Yeah,
very much. You know, if you're not doing the right things, it doesn't matter how well you do them or how often you do them. You really do have to do the right things. Yeah. Fred, you mentioned BANT, and you said it so quickly, I'm not sure everybody would have caught it. What do you mean by BANT?
So BANT is, it's a, for me, very old-fashioned way of qualifying.
Okay.
Budget, authority, need, and timescale.
Yeah.
You ask questions to understand, have they got any money? Who's the person making the decision? Do they actually need this stuff? When are they going to buy it? I mean, where is that conversation focused? That's purely for me as a salesperson to decide whether I want to go ahead or not. Now, I'm not saying we don't do any of that at all. That's kind of wrapped into the stuff we're doing. But if you come on a conversation with me and just only talk about that, I'm going to, what have I just done with that time? I really could have been solving this problem I have myself. And that is what's going on. We see these figures, which is saying that customers, buyers are trying to self-diagnose it. They prefer the reckless experience because they're not getting any stimulation. Or might as well save that time answering questions for somebody else about what they want to do it myself.
Very good. Thank you. Another question that's in: who taught you the most about selling, and what was the best tip you learned from them?
Structured training days, guy called Bob Hayward. I don't think that was a question from the floor, Bob. I think you put that in there.
Get out of here. It was never me. Come on.
Who taught me the most about selling?
And what was the best tip you learned from them?
Who is really hard. I mean, yeah, if I think about Dad and his kind of ethos and what sales, customer service, business is all about, of course, that's had a massive impact on my life. The best tip was actually probably from my first boss in first proper job after I left university, where he said, look, this is all about making the customer look good. And that's something that stayed with me all the time. Now, that was his literal expression. I can remember him saying those words. You can interpret that in slightly different ways, but yeah, it's helping them achieve what they want to achieve. It's helping them get the outcomes that they need. Again, if you don't look good, so they can get their promotions and their sort of personal drivers achieved as well as their business drivers, then yeah, I think that's stood me in good stead.
Very good. Okay, thanks. We have another question in. Do salespeople sometimes contribute to impulsive buying?
Do salespeople? I don't. That's a really good question. I think you stumped me on that one a little bit. I
suppose,
but my gut instinct is no, because why would you be talking to a salesperson impulsively? I mean, this could be the definition of impulsive buying. Impulsive buying for me is when you kind of go into the supermarket and there's a chocolate bar, and I love that. That for me is more the impulse buy. If you're talking to a salesperson, and again, I'm thinking B2B sales, that's my world. Why would you be doing that just on an off chance, on a bit of a whim, and go, whoa, amazing, you just said that, I'm going to buy that stuff. That's how I understand impulse buy. Can they help you understand the importance, the urgency, the reason why you should be doing something now rather than later, or just staying with the status quo? 100%, that is a salesperson's job. Again, back to helping you think. This is a situation I didn't really realize, but because of how they've asked questions, I understood that, whoa, I need to do something about this. So if we, and maybe I've just flipped or changed the definition of impulse buying a little bit there, that if we define it as that, yes, they can. But just the more I kind of pick up the chocolate bar because I fancy, I'm not so sure, because I don't think they'd be in the conversation.
Hey, Fred, you're stunning. Sadly, we're running out of time. You've done an amazing job and given us so many practical insights and ideas. You certainly got the juices flowing. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate that. Now,